So good morning officially, everyone, and welcome to the NEA Big Read, Evelyn, the Adventurous Entomologist Meetup. My name is Chelsea, and I'm a museum educator at the Florida Museum, and I'm excited to introduce you to our children's book, the second of our children's book meetups in partnership with the Alachua County Library District. You'll notice that right now you are muted with your cameras turned off, and this is because we're using a Zoom webinar feature. So the chat option will remain open throughout the event, so you can use that respectfully. And if you have a question for a scientist or author, please submit it through the chat. But make sure you're addressing it to all panelists and hosts. That way everyone can see what you have to say. So this program and the ones I'm about to tell you about are all supported by the National Endowment for the Arts Big Read grant that has allowed us to offer a series of free events building community in Alachua County by uplifting the stories of women in science. You can learn about our other events in this series by following the links in the chat that my helper is going to be posting as I go through each of them. So the upcoming children and family events include the Finding Wonders Children's Book Meetup. So this is another book in our series, and the author Jeannie Atkins will be joining us for this one as well, and also a paleontologist that we can talk to. So that'll be really fun. Another event that you definitely don't want to miss is Girls Do Science. So at this event, there'll be an opportunity to meet and ask questions to 4 different scientists who contributed to the Girls Do Science activity book, which is currently available for free PDF download on the museum's website. So make sure to check out this activity, and you can find different things to do that were curated by current scientists for future scientists that you can do at home. So this is like a 60-page booklet with all kinds of really cool stuff. So you should definitely check that out and download it, and then join us on February 13th for this event. Another thing we have coming up is our keynote speaker, Emily Grassley. So Emily is the host of YouTube's show, Brain Scoop. If you haven't checked that out, I definitely recommend it. And she is also the host of the PBS show, Prehistoric Road Trip. Super cool, especially if you like fossils. And she'll be speaking with us virtually on.
Hi, so it looks like Chelsea has frozen for a second. This is Amy, I'm assisting her today. And Emily Grassley is going to be visiting with us on Friday, February 19th at 7 o'clock. And now Chelsea's back.
Sorry about that, everyone. Thank you, Amy. That's never happened to me before. All right, let's get back to our slideshow. All right, so today you'll be meeting Christine Evans, who's the author of Evelyn, the Adventurous Entomologist, and also 2 entomologists, VR and Rachel. When they're finished telling you the cool stuff about studying insects, I'll come back and read your questions from the chat so they can answer them. So feel free to be filling in your questions throughout the event, and we'll make sure to get to those. And at the end of the program, we're going to send you a survey. So with this survey, you can help us, and this is for kids and their grown-ups to fill out together, to tell us what you thought about the program and spending your morning with us. So with this, we'll be able to keep improving our programs and find things that you like that we can improve on. So now that we're all caught up and I am here for you, I am going to turn this over to Madison from the Alachua County Library, who's going to talk with you, with the author, all about Evelyn, the Adventurous Entomologist. Madison, are you there?
Hello, everybody. All right, so for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Miss Madison. I am a youth services librarian over at Alachua County's headquarter branch. And for anyone who hasn't had a chance to read the book, Evelyn the Adventurous Entomologist yet, this story is about entomologist Evelyn Cheeseman. And entomologist, by the way, is what we call a bug scientist. Now, Evelyn was an aspiring, adventurous woman who spent her life pursuing her dreams no matter what anyone else thought. And throughout her life, she revitalized the London Zoo insect house, traveled all over the world on solo expeditions, and collected thousands of specimens and discovered new species of insects. Now, today, not only do we get to talk about Evelyn Cheeseman, but we also get to talk to the author who wrote the book. Christine Evans is a children's book author originally from Great Britain who now lives in California with her family. She has jumped out of a plane once, windsurfed once, and water skied once. She much prefers books and writing to adrenaline sports. Welcome, Christine.
Hi, lovely to see you.
Great to see you. So Christine, let's start with the interview. How did you come up with the idea to write about Evelyn Cheeseman?
Right, well, I knew I wanted to write a biography about a woman scientist that people hadn't heard of, which makes it a bit tricky because how do you find out about a woman scientist that people haven't heard of? So I had to plug in lots of different searches into Google, like looking for women scientists. And then I went down to certain types of scientists and I came across Evelyn's story on the London Zoo website. They'd written a short story about her. And then I found more. So once I found that, I was like, oh, this is cool. No one seems to have written about Evelyn Cheeseman in children's books. And so I found more. I found some on the Natural History Museum in London. They've got an article about her. And then I found out that she'd written her own autobiography. So I got hold of these two books, read her books, read her words, and I knew that I had to write a picture book about her.
Wonderful. Wow. So was it difficult to narrow down the many things Evelyn did and accomplished throughout her life when you were writing? And what made you choose the milestones you did?
Yeah, so those two books are packed full of all her adventures. She went on 8 solo expeditions. So there's a lot of adventures to choose from. She fell down into like rivers, she got lost, she found a snake that she had to remove from her camp. She had lots of different adventures. So I had to really think carefully about what was the story I wanted to tell about Evelyn. And I wanted to tell a story of perseverance, of keeping going when people say you can't. And so I had to find the stories in her story that would tell that. So that's how I chose those aspects of her life that gave me that lovely refrain, but Evelyn went anyway. And I'll tell you, just as we're on that, that didn't even come into the book. That refrain didn't come into the book until probably in one of my last edits of the story. I was like, oh, I like that. I can use that refrain, but Evelyn went anyway. And it's so lovely to be able to do that, particularly when I get to read it aloud with kids, because everyone can join in.
Oh, that's so great. So question for you, do you have a favorite insect? And if so, what is it?
Growing up, I loved butterflies, which I'm sure I'm not the only one here today who loves butterflies. When I was little at school, I did a project on the butterflies in the English countryside, which are beautiful. And so I've always loved butterflies. But since moving out to California, one day we found a praying mantis on our screen outside. And so I think they're probably the coolest insect that I've seen in the garden. So I think praying mantis is up there with the butterflies, but we still love butterflies, and we've got caterpillars right now. So we've got them, they've just got into their chrysalis. So we're looking forward to studying those at home.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And speaking of butterflies, beautiful insects, this book has some beautiful illustrations. What was it like working with illustrator Yasmin Imamura to really bring Evelyn's story to life?
I know, Yaz's work is beautiful, and I'm going to give Yaz a little plug. She's got lots more beautiful picture books, including one all about butterflies, Winged Wonders by Meg Pincus, that's done really, I think, won lots of awards this year. So she's a beautiful illustrator. Evelyn was her first book too. So we were both new, it's both our debut books, but we never spoke. So we've never spoken, and in the process of making the book, we had no contact. So that comes, people are always surprised by that. So the process for making a book is an editor will say this, yes, they want to publish your book at a publishing house. And so my editor said, yes, I want to publish your book. And, all the back and forth with my agent, but she sent me sketches that Yaz had produced of how she would draw Evelyn, and I was blown away. So I got to have input into say, yes, I love her work, but it's down to the editor and the art director at the publishing house to decide on who the illustrator is. And so I saw those early sketches and I loved them. And then she produced more sketches. And so I got to see those as we went along. And then I saw a full mock-up, which had the text and her sketches again. And so the first time I saw the coloured version, the painted version, was just amazing. So seeing your words come to life when someone else illustrates them is really amazing. But we speak now, like we're in contact now. But during that process of back and forth, I tell my editor, who tells the art director, who tells the illustrator. So you don't ever speak in person.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy. So aside from the not speaking, what was one of the most surprising things you learned in creating this book?
How long it takes to create a book. Obviously, this was my first one, and I've written several since, but this was my first book, and so I didn't realize quite how long the whole process takes. So I got the idea for writing Evelyn in May of 2017, I think, and then I sold it around a year later. I think it was about the April 2018 I sold it, and then it came out in September 2019. So that's like 2.5 years from when I had the original idea is when the book came out. But then all behind the scenes, all this illustration is happening. You're editing. So even when you sell your book, you still have to keep editing it, which I also didn't think I really grasped that I was like, I've done. And I handed it in to an editor, and then all the comments then come back from the editor and the editing team that I have to make all these edits and then they have to do it again, and then it goes to, and then again maybe like 3 rounds. At my chapter book series, I had 3 rounds of edits, and then it goes to a copy editor, and they're the real experts in making sure you've got your grammar right and the commas are in the right place, and they do fact checking too, make sure that you've been consistent. And so that whole process is why it takes a very long time. And then there's the design, like the book is also designed by somebody. It's not the illustrator who designs the book. So someone designs it. And so the whole team behind the book that you don't ever see really or know much about, but that's why it takes a long time to make a book.
My goodness, sounds like quite a lesson in patience and organization.
Definitely.
So you mentioned how long it took you to write the book was about the writing of the book. Was that the whole 2-year process, or the writing took about 1 year, you mentioned? How long did that take?
I think the writing part took me, so I got the idea, I had to do all the research, I had to read the books, and that's only a few of her books. I've got another couple here, so I didn't get all of hers because obviously these were written in the 1920s, so I've got another couple here. But so I read her books, I learned lots about her, I wrote lots of different versions. Because this was my first biography, my first non-fiction book. It has to all be completely right. So I had to do lots of checking. I think my first draft probably doesn't even have that many words that have made it into the final book, honestly, because I had to rewrite it so many times. A big part of writing a book is rewriting your book. So I think I probably had stuff that I was sending out. I've got critique partners who read my work for me before I send it anywhere else. And so they got to see it after a couple of months, maybe. And then I didn't have an agent at that point, so you have to also try and get an agent. And so the rewriting process was all the way up to the point that I sold the book. So I was living with Evelyn and this book for about a year before I sold it. So, and all that time I was, not constantly, I'm working on other projects, but all that time I have a big scroll that I unwind when I do school events that has all my versions of the book, and it goes across the entire school hall. So that's, I don't tend to revise that much now. It's just, it's my first one, and it was my first biography, so it took a lot of work. So it's about 50 different revisions I worked on. I worked on different tenses, on different points of view. Took a while.
So what's your favorite book that you didn't write?
I can't possibly choose just one. But growing up, I loved, obviously because I'm British, I grew up loving Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton. They were the two big authors of my childhood that I've always loved. And I still love Roald Dahl now, and I'm sure lots of kids watching do too. Matilda's probably my favourite Roald Dahl. And my girls love Roald Dahl too, luckily. And then more recently, I read everything, because I read everything from picture books through to adult books. And so I've got it here. Can I reach it? My most favourite recent picture book isn't non-fiction, isn't about bugs. It's this beautiful book by my friend Joanna Ho. Eyes That Kiss in the Corners. It came a New York Times bestseller last week. It's beautiful. And so there's just constantly beautiful books, and it's hard to choose just one, but they're some of my current favorites.
That's fair. Choosing favorite books is always impossible.
I'm sure you must be the same.
Yeah, with the library and the access to the many books, there's always a new favorite this week. So have you written any other books?
Yes. I've written a lot of books, but only a few make it past the process of getting to my agent, who then decides who she's going to send it out to. But I have got a few that have been published. So Emily's Idea came out last year. Gosh, well, as you all probably feel, the time is kind of confusing these days, but it was last March 2020, Emily's Idea came out. And that's illustrated by Marta Alvarez Miguen. She lives in Spain. So somebody else who I never spoke to. And we've communicated a little bit since, but we had no contact either. And then I have a chapter book series launching on March 1st called The Wish Library. Here it is. This is an advanced reader copy. So the final one's going to be hardback, and 2 are coming out on the same day. So this is Snow Day in May, book 1, and Principle for a Day. Book 2 is going to come out on the same day, and book 3 later this year. So that's a dream come true, writing a chapter book series.
Oh, those look like so much fun.
Yes, they've been so much fun to write. I mean, writing about a library, but an unusual library, where you can have wishes granted, but you have to return them. So there's the whole kind of careful what you wish for and make sure you return them on time. As you know, Madison, it's very important to return things to the library on time. And, you know, solving problems. You think a wish would make it all better, but you have to kind of figure out what you need to do to get that. I don't know what's the way to put it. Return your wish on time, but also solve your problem without wishing it.
Oh, that sounds like some fun shenanigans. I like it.
There are definitely some fun shenanigans. I mean, this cover alone, I mean, she's skiing in the Bay Area. So it's set in the Bay Area. So the fact that there's snow in May in Bay Area is fun. And that's illustrated by Patrick Corrigan, and he lives in the UK.
Very nice. So with all these books that you've written and you talk about the whole writing process, do you ever get writer's block, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, and particularly recently, obviously, the past year has been much harder to write. And I always tell people who are coming up with struggling to write is keep writing down your ideas. So even when I find it hard to write a full story, like a picture book or anything longer, I can always come up with ideas. I find coming up with ideas the easy part of the process. I find sitting down to write the first draft the hard part of the process. That's my least favorite part, honestly, is that first draft, because I love editing. So I know I mentioned I edited Evelyn 50 times. I mean, I don't love it that much, but I really like being able to manipulate the words and pull out what you really want to tell in the story. So when I get writer's block, it's usually with that first draft that I'm struggling with. So I will sometimes taking a walk or a run is how I get through that. Looking at ideas that I've written down and maybe working one of those for a bit. The nice thing about writing picture books is because they are quite short, it doesn't make them easy to write, but because they are quite short, I can kind of switch to a different project, and I can switch between writing a chapter book to writing a picture book. So sometimes writing something else is the way out of writer's block, getting away from it. Try something, drawing something instead. I'm not an illustrator, but I still love to draw. And so sometimes just doing something else creative with your hands. I've taken up an unusual hobby since being at home. I started carving spoons, with wood whittling. Who knew? And so I've started, that's something different to do. And when you're doing something different, where you're concentrating on that, that's when things start to happen, like in the back of your mind. And I often will find that the solution will not magically come to me, but when you're not focusing on the problem, it will come to you.
Yeah, and kind of present itself.
Yeah, and then if you're struggling with the ideas in the first place, which I say I'm not of ideas, but it's still hard sometimes to come up with ideas, is to read lots. And that doesn't mean like using ideas from the books, but I just find reading other people's work just inspires me to sit down and write as well.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, it's it can be tricky, that writer's block, but I think there's always something you can do that's adjacent. Like you can write something else or draw something.
Do you have any authors that are kind of like go-tos that help get you out of writer's block, or just kind of read in general?
Yeah, read in general, but also probably not read things that I'm specifically working on. So if so I love poetry, so I'll read poetry as a change. I write poetry sometimes too, but not published, but just for me and just for Instagram. You might hear, if you're at school, you might hear your teachers use this term, or within the authors say too, we have something we call like mentor texts, where if I'm writing a biography, then I might read a lot of biographies to give me an idea of the structure that other authors use as well. So sometimes I'll do that. One of the books I did read while writing Evelyn was Shark Lady by Jess Keating. I love Jess Keating's biographies. And so reading other people's biographies helped inspire me for the structure and things like that. So it just depends on what I'm stuck on.
No, fair enough. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's wonderful. Thank you. And Chelsea, could you go to the next slide for me, please? Thank you. Thank you. All right. So if you like Evelyn the Entomologist, we have all of these books here at the library. You can check them out, either swing by one of our branches, or you can take a look at Overdrive, which is our collection of ebooks and digital audiobooks too. So definitely take a look there. And if you ever buy during browsing hours, the $5.95 section in nonfiction will have all the information you could ever want on insects. So take a look at that. And thank you everybody very much. Chelsea?
Yep, I'll take it away. Thank you so much, Madison and Christine.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was so awesome hearing about the kind of Christine's process for writing books and learning about insects and other interesting people in history to write about. I feel inspired to write a children's book of my own now. I'm kind of stalling in case you guys want to write down any of these titles, but we can also send, we'll also have the recording of this event up on our website probably within a week. So we'll be able to check back in on this. And with that, I would like to turn it over to our first entomologist, VR, who is going to tell us all about her work as a master's student in entomology at the University of Florida. VR, are you ready to join us?
Yes, hello.
Here is your first slide. Take it away, VR.
All right, hi everybody. I'm really happy to be here with you all today. I'm VR. I'm a master's student studying entomology at the University of Florida. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about how I became an entomologist and what it's like to study insects. Go to the next slide. So I've been fascinated with insects for as long as I can remember. And in this photo, I'm probably 5 years old and I'm holding a walking stick, which was my favorite insect when I was growing up. And so from the ages of about 5 to 7, I had an entomologist named Mr. Valentine come to my birthday parties. And Mr. Valentine would bring lots of insects and even some reptiles. And so interacting with these insects at such a young age is really my earliest memory of wanting to be an entomologist. So before I really started studying entomology, I always had insect pets. And let me tell you, insects make really great pets. So on the left are some of my Australian spiny walking sticks. And these guys are covered in these sharp spines on their exoskeletons that prevents them from being eaten by predators. And walking sticks are really cool and they have some cool behaviors that helps them blend in with their environment. So if you're ever holding a walking stick and you blow on it lightly, it'll start swaying back and forth. And they do this to imitate branches and leaves blowing in the wind. And then on the right is one of my Madagascar hissing cockroaches. And cockroaches kind of get a bad rap, but really they're harmless. And these guys are so sweet, and they don't have wings, this species, and so they can't even fly. And Madagascar hissing cockroaches also have this cool technique where they will blow air through the top layer of their exoskeleton, which makes a really loud hissing sound. So it makes predators think that they're larger than they are. Next slide. So in college, my love for insects drew me to studying abroad in Ecuador. And so Ecuador is located on the equator, which means that unlike other locations in the world, there are no seasons. So the temperature is pretty much constant throughout the year. And this makes it so that in the Amazon that reaches into Ecuador, there's the highest amount of different species of anywhere on the planet. So this makes it an amazing place to go if you love insects. Next. So in Ecuador, I was able to see and hold so many different insects that I could have never dreamed of. And one of the best parts about studying abroad there was getting to do this research project on leafcutter ants. And this is what sparked my love for ants. Next. So leafcutter ants are super cool. Maybe some of you have heard about them, and they're actually my favorite insect. So leafcutter ants, as their name suggests, cut leaves, and their colonies can actually get so big that they cut so many leaves that they cut more leaves than any other plant-eating animal in the Amazon. And that's a lot of leaves. However, they don't actually eat these leaves. So what they do is they carry them back to their nest. Next slide. And they grow it into a fungus. So these ants are farmers, and they're often called Earth's first farmers. And so once the leaves are brought into the nest, other ants will cut these leaves into really tiny pieces, and they'll pierce them with their teeth and put their saliva on it, and then they'll shake it into the fungus so the fungus can eat the leaves, and then the ants eat the fungus. So they have what's called a symbiotic relationship. So the ants and the fungus need each other to survive, and they both benefit from their relationship. Next slide. So once I got back from studying abroad in Ecuador, I actually had this amazing opportunity to work in a leafcutter ant at my college campus at the University of Oregon. And this was pretty lucky because, believe it or not, leafcutter ants are not super common. But one of the cool things about being an entomologist that I learned from working in this lab is that there's so many different ways you can study insects. So in this lab, some of us studied the biology of these ants, such as their behavior, but we also studied the physics of these ants. So if you look at this ant head on the right here, there's these long things sticking out of its face, and these are called the mandibles, and it's what the ants use to eat. And on the mandibles, there's these really tiny teeth, and these look black in the photo. They're a darker color. And in that area, there's actually a really high concentration of metals, which makes it so these ants' mandibles can be really sharp, but also really strong, so they don't break when they're cutting all those leaves. Next. So something else that I love about being an entomologist and really just about being a scientist is getting to go to conferences. And at conferences, scientists from all over come together to share their research and to learn new things. So the first conference that I went to as an entomologist was in Arizona, and this was an amazing learning experience for me. Next slide. One of the activities that we did at this conference is something that entomologists love to do, and it's called blacklighting. So when you go blacklighting, a white sheet is hung up and a light is shown on the sheet, which makes it really bright. And so insects from all over will come flying and crawling, and then all of these entomologists, as you can see here, will gather around and see what insects show up. Next slide. So after all of these experiences, I knew I wanted to keep studying ants. And this brought me to the University of Florida, which is where I am now. Next. So my research focuses on a specific species of ant known as the little fire ant. These ants are super tiny, as you can see, compared to this pencil, but they actually have a pretty painful sting compared to their small size, which is why the word fire is in their name. These ants are originally from Central and South America, but they have made their way to tropical regions around the world, including Florida. And although these ants are really tiny, they can actually have a big impact on their new environments, and they can affect native species. And they can also become pests because they have a painful sting, and they tend these sap-sucking insects that are harmful to crops. Next slide. So some of my research takes place outside, which I love. I love working in the field and getting to see these ants in natural environments. So on the left, you can see me and one of the undergrads that works in our lab, and we're looking for these ants by putting down sausage baits. And so what you can do is put down a little piece of sausage at the base of a tree or in leaf litter and wait 30 minutes. And then when you come back, you can see all of the ants that show up, which will tell you what ants are there. And then on the right, this is another thing that we do in the field to sample for species. And what you do here is you pick up leaf litter and you put it into this big apparatus and you shake it, and then all the small insects will fall to the bottom. So this is a great way to see what insects are in that area. Next. Something I also love to do to get up close and personal with these ants and with really any insect is macro photography. And so this is a photo that I took of two little fire ant workers, and these ants are communicating with each other. So when ants touch their antenna to each other, it's a way that they can communicate and also recognize whether or not they're part of the same colony and they're sisters, or they're part of a different colony and might be their enemy. Next. And with that, I just want to say that insects are so cool and we still have so much to learn about them. So I love being an entomologist, and thank you for listening, and I'm excited for you to hear Rachel, my friend and colleague.
Thank you, VR. That was awesome. I see we're already getting some questions for you in the chat, and we'll save those until after Rachel's presentation, but lots of questions about ant bites I see coming in. So start thinking about those stories for us. And with that, we're going to turn it over to our other entomologist, Rachel. Rachel, are you here to join us?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you about what being an entomologist is like, and then I'm excited to hear your questions as well. So within the world of bugs, I too, like VR, the previous speaker, concentrate on studying ants. And right now I work at the USDA Imported Fire Ant and Household Insects Lab, where we mainly study pesky ants and how to better control them. But in the past, I've studied ant diversity in forests, and I've studied bees and beetles. But today I'll be talking about some of my current and past experiences as an entomologist, and I'll mainly be talking about ants and also sharing photos from some other entomologists to show what they do, because since there are so many different insects, there are many ways to be an entomologist. But there are three main things that our job entails, and I'm going to go through each of those three main things to give you a good idea of all the different things we do. Next. The first thing I'm going to discuss is fieldwork, and fieldwork is all the work us entomologists do outside. So I just finished a big project studying ants in this habitat shown here, a longleaf pine forest. And for this project, I worked with a team of entomologists, and we wanted to learn which ants live here in this habitat and which ones help plants move to new areas. Because you may not know this yet, but some ants will pick up plant seeds and move them around, which helps plants grow in new areas. So you can see down here, there are two photos of just a couple different ant species that will collect ants, or collect seeds rather. So to learn which ants collect seeds in this habitat, we put seeds out on little pieces of paper and waited for ants to come by to collect them. And when an ant came by and picked up the seed, we sucked it up with a pooter. So this is what a pooter looks like. So a pooter is this nice little helpful tool for picking up small insects like ants, flies, little beetles, and other small bugs. And so it has to be something that's small enough to fit through this tube here. And what you do is using this end, this is a filter so you don't breathe in a bunch of dirt. You suck in and you create a vacuum that sort of just sucks up the insect and puts it in this little tube here where then you can observe it up close and you can keep it. So if you would like to collect small critters, you can make a homemade version of a pooter. And so in the chat, there should be 2 links that are for 2 different videos that show you how to make a homemade version of a pooter. And there'll also be a link where you can buy one like this one that I just showed you. So other friends of mine study different insects. So their field work takes place in different places. So in some of these photos here, these are a bunch of different friends that I have worked with in the past or that I just know of that also study insects. And you can see a lot of work being done on farms. And this is because many entomologists study insects that affect fruit and vegetable plants. And you can see that special clothing might be needed. For instance, when you're working with honeybees to prevent honeybee stings. But you can see that places that we work to do our field work is really varied. There's not one type of uniform. And although many of us do field work on farms and in natural areas and might even travel to other countries like Evelyn, the entomologist, insects are everywhere. And so all you really need to do is step outside and look around and you will find them. And so in this photo here on the bottom right, you can see that these entomologists found a lot of interesting ants around a garbage can. And so they were thrilled by that. Next. Okay. So another main thing that we do, main part of our job is working in the lab. And so if you do a lot of field work, you're going to be collecting a lot of insects that you then have to bring back to the lab to determine what different insects you collected. And so to do that, a lot of the times we need to use a microscope. So here you can see me sitting at a microscope, and then this bottom left picture is all of the ants that I was able to identify by looking at them through the microscope. And so when you can zoom in real close using a microscope, you can see that all these ants look a lot different. But if you just see them with your naked eye, they might just be like, oh, that's a brown ant, that's a red ant, that's a black ant. So a lot of times we need microscopes in order to identify our ants that we collected. And another thing that I do while in the lab is take care of ant colonies. So in this middle photo here, this is a colony of about 20,000 red imported fire ants. And in my lab at the USDA, we keep these colonies ready so that we can use them for research projects, and we keep them on racks, and we have colonies in these pans. And we actually use cat litter pans with no cat litter, just ants, because that's the perfect size for keeping a really big ant colony. And since we keep the colonies, we have all the life stages of ants. And so here on the bottom right, you can see that I took these pictures through a microscope so you can better able to see them. And so there are ant eggs, and then the ant eggs hatch and they become larvae, and the larvae are just helpless and they're just lying on their backs and just being fed all day. And once they eat enough and grow, they go into the pupa stage, which is basically like a cocoon where they undergo metamorphosis and then emerge as adults. Next slide. Thank you. So other entomologists study a multitude of other things, including insect DNA or chemistry. And so for this, they might need special lab equipment and a clean indoor environment to do that. So here on the left, you can see my colleagues and friends, Jason and Gabby, using a pipetter to move around little bits of liquid that contain insect DNA and like the inside of fly stomachs. And but then also another thing that we do inside is we need to keep plants inside. And this is because many insects eat plants or live in plants. And so here on the top right, you can see Octavio, he had to bring in this bit of wood and able to try to get beetles out of this wood that live in the wood, lay their eggs in the wood, and their larvae eat the wood. And so they are a pest of different trees like avocado trees down in South Florida. And then here on the bottom right, my friend Cassie is watering plants that she has to grow so that she can feed the plants to her caterpillars because she studies butterflies. And so this is really common. We do have a lot of insects that need plants. Most insects need plants in order to eat or live. And so we have greenhouses like full of plants that we keep for our research projects. Next. Thank you. The third main component of my job is communication. And so this includes talking to students at school or online about science and being an entomologist, or about ants and my specific research. And so to help teach about insects, we use insect collections, like the one shown in this photo right here. So at home, I do have some collections of ants, and these are hard to see on camera. So I also brought home some larger insects that I thought would show up well. And so after collecting insects, we put them on pins. So each of these are on like a little pin, and we labeled them with information about where we collected them, when we collected them, and what insect they are. And so here I have a longhorn beetle. This is actually one of my favorite insects besides ants, and a cicada and a robber fly. And so these two, like I said earlier, a lot of insects, they eat plants. So these two eat plants, but a robber fly actually eats other insects. And if you collect a lot like me, you might also even want to create art with your insect specimens. And so I made this little assortment of ants, or not ants, insects, into like a little art piece that I have hanging in my dining room. So one of the things that we like to do, or that I like to do when I go into classrooms or that I talk with people about ants, is to be able to show them these specimens. And then also, it's fun to be able to interact with things too, right? So with a special project I worked on to help college students see the beauty and detail of ants, we scanned ants so that they could be 3D printed. So I have this head printed of a Dracula ant, and I have another head here painted of a twig ant. And these are really cool because then you can see what they look like close up without a microscope. And then a final aspect of my job that I do that involves communication is communicating with other entomologists about my research. So like VR mentioned, we go to conferences, we go to these large meetings where we all get together, socialize, and share presentations. And to do this, we often get to travel to other states and countries to meet entomologists. So recently I got to go to Puerto Rico, and I got to visit the El Yunque forest while I was there. So traveling can be an aspect of being an entomologist, but you can also just do your fieldwork and research nearby where you live. So I hope now that you have a better understanding of what being an entomologist is like. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hear what you're curious about. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I might ask you in the questions to hold up some of your show and tells so we can see them a little bigger too.
Yeah.
And with that, would VR and Christine like to join us back so we can ask you all some questions? We got quite a few of them here. All right, looks like we got everyone. And I'm gonna make sure that we're seeing everyone at the same time here. So I'm gonna put us into the right mode. So yeah, great. Now we're in gallery view. Cool. So you guys should be able to see all of your experts here. And I'm going to ask the first question to Christine. So Rachel and VR can have a little break there, and then we'll go into our scientist questions. So Christine, do you have any recommendations for future writers or maybe kids that are currently interested in writing?
Oh, definitely. I mentioned it when we were talking, is that you must read a lot if you want to be a writer. So I read a lot. I read so many books all the time. Read widely and read whatever you love too. Like read graphic novels, read picture books, read everything you love, and keep a notebook. So every time you have an idea, have a notebook. I mean, I admit I use my phone because that's something I always have with me. So I use my phone as my notebook. But have a notebook where you can write down those ideas, because you might think you'll remember your ideas, but they'll disappear, they'll go. So you need to write down your ideas so that you're ready to write.
Very good. So
Yeah.
reading and keeping a notebook are awesome tips. Next question I'll ask VR. So do you have any problems with leafcutter ants biting you? Has that been something you've experienced?
Yes, well, yeah, so leafcutter ants don't sting, but as I mentioned, they have super sharp mandibles because they have to be sharp because they cut leaves. And they also have a really cool caste system, which I didn't really get into, but basically there's different size ants that have different jobs. So leafcutter ants, the largest size that they get is like this big. I don't know if you can tell how big that is, but those guys will, ladies, excuse me, those ladies will bite, but only if you disrupt their nest. So it's effective against, anteaters, but yeah.
Cool. Next question will go to Rachel. Rachel, can you show us your pinned insects again, and maybe tell us what kind of pins you use and how a little bit about that process?
Right. So, okay, so these pins, here we go. You can see sort of that they're sticking out like a little, like, I don't know, maybe half a centimeter from the insect. So what you can go on, there's a couple of different websites that you can go and get supplies for pinning insects. And the one that I use the most is BioQuip, which is also, I gave you a link for a pooter that you could buy off BioQuip. And they have different size pins that you can buy that are specifically for pinning insects. And we normally get number 2 or number 3 size pins, which just have to do with the width of them, because you don't want ones that are super thin and wobbly. And we normally pin them like just to the right, like middle. But what you can do is there's really great resources online. Like if you look up, I know that Florida 4-H has some good resources that can show you like how to do your own insect collection, and they'll show you like where on different insects to put the pin, because on some insects you have to put it in a place that's different than typical. Like normally it's just like right to the side here in the middle but sometimes like on an insect that's like really squishy, or like it's not going to hold very well, and so they tell you the best place to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. And I would say for all of you, if you're interested in pinning insects, you can always visit the Florida Museum. And if you go towards the back, see scientists that are actively putting pins into mostly butterflies and moths. So you can visit the museum and see scientists pinning insects there, which is really cool. And then also while you're there, you could check out the Florida Museum gift shop and maybe find some cicada pins similar to these, because I'm pretty sure that's where I bought them. And I saw that question come in too. So I'll go ahead and answer it while I'm here. Next question is about the pooter, Rachel, while we have you. Have you ever forgotten the filter and sucked up an insect?
Okay, well, normally you cannot suck up insects because there's still a nice little filter in here. Let me see if I can get this open. So there's this nice little like little mesh grating right here. So nothing smaller than that can go into your mouth. So it's just really like dirt or sand particles you might get into your mouth. And yeah, I've had that happen. So I've eaten, I guess, a lot of soil. But I'm still here, everything's fine. And yeah, so all your insects will go into this little tube in here and nowhere near your mouth. But have I ever eaten an insect? Yes, I have. I have eaten ants, because you can eat like dried ants. People dry ants and big queens that have lots of nice little fat and protein, and then season them, and they're really yummy.
Cool. Um, I know I've tried one. It kind of tasted a little citrusy. Christine, were the butterflies that you saw in England different than the ones that you see in California?
Yeah. I grew up seeing, so I don't know if these are the official names, but how I called them, the peacock butterflies. I've never seen one of those here. I don't believe we have monarchs in the UK. If we do, I never saw one. We have swallowtails, probably a different to the type that you see in California, but yeah, definitely different ones between the UK and California. My favorite when I was a kid was the peacock butterfly because they're so beautiful. They have the eyes on the wings that look like the same as peacock feathers.
Oh yeah. We have some also at the Florida Museum in the rainforest. We call them the owl butterflies that kind of look like big owl eyes on it. So maybe
Yes.
if anyone visits the Florida Museum, you might be able to see some of those butterflies there.
I love those ones. They're so amazing.
So this question goes to our entomologists. And it's specifically about beetles. So I'm not sure how much you two know about beetles, but we'll give it a try. So how do beetles fly with such heavy armor? Or how bumblebees fly with short wings and stout bodies? You guys have any ideas about flying insects, or are you guys mostly sticking to those ants? Any ideas? Rachel, do you want to answer?
Oh, I don't have a good answer. I was going to show you guys are just talking about this type of
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
I just wanted to show that.
Yeah. VR, do you have any ideas about beetles?
Well, I do not study beetles or bees, but I do know that insects have strong muscles, and they are, although they are heavy, and some beetles are very heavy, they do have strong muscles and are still not, well, mostly not that big. So their weight is still pretty small, but I can't really go much further than the strong muscles.
That's okay. That's a good example of how not all scientists know everything about a specific thing. Lots of scientists study really, really specific things about whatever their field of interest is. So that's something that you guys could look up and kind of explore on your own as a budding entomologist.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that some people study insect flight and insect wings and how they work to try to learn how to make better flying, like drones, for instance, or they look into like how can we model technology after insects. And so there are very specific, there are people that you're saying like really specialize in that, but I don't know. I'd have to ask them or do some research on my own, like you said, like a budding entomologist.
Yeah, we can definitely do our own research. So we'll bring it back to ants. So Rachel, how do you keep the ants from getting out of the pan in the photo that you showed us? And then also another question kind of tagging onto that, do the ants ever bite the other ants?
Oh, yeah. So if ants are from different nests and they're competing for like a food resource, they can bite each other. And what I normally see is I see like larger ants surrounded by smaller ants, and like the smaller ants each have a leg. So they're just like pinning the ant down so that it can't get into their food. But the way we keep ants inside those pans is with this material. It's called Fluon. It's like this liquid that we can just paint on the sides of the pan, and they can't crawl up it. So they are just confined to the pan. Or sometimes we even use baby powder because ants also can't crawl up baby powder. So you can just put baby powder around a pan or a container and they can't crawl out of it.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Baby powder has so many uses. So VR, this question I'll send to you. Do all insects have exoskeletons? Do you know about this?
So some insects are soft-bodied, such as silverfish. And if you think of like termites are softer, but exoskeletons, yeah, so insects are invertebrates, which means that they don't have a spine, right? So instead of having an internal skeleton, they have an external skeleton. Yeah, they vary among, types of insects.
Cool. So there's lots of different types of body types that an insect could have, it sounds like, and they use them all really differently. Lots of diversity in insects. That's one thing I know. So that means there's lots and lots and lots and lots of different kinds. Okay, so I'm going to send this question and we'll see if Rachel or VR wants to answer it first. You can raise your hand if whoever raises their hand first can answer the question.
Okay.
So what can kids do to help insects? Or is there anything, any projects that kids might be able to contribute to help entomologists study more insects? Do you know of anything? Hands up. Looks like Rachel has something.
Okay.
Rachel, you can go first.
Yeah, so what you can do that is probably the easiest thing for you to do and most impactful is to have a natural yard and to have lots of plants in your yard. So this means like don't spray like different insecticides because, you know, there are a lot of insects that even just like live in the grass, and, you know, if your grass looks really, really pretty, that might be because you're spraying insecticides, and that can kill a lot of different insects. So if you just have like a more natural yard, plant lots of flowers that will attract pollinators and just like a really big diversity of different plants, then you'll have a greater diversity of insects. But also there are specific projects called citizen science projects that you can look up where researchers are asking people, like the general public, and normally, you know, kids can do it too, to help them learn where certain insect species occur, and they give you directions. And normally they're very, very simple projects, but, you know, maybe you can just like, you know, put out like a little trap. They'll tell you how to make a specific trap, and then you can capture an insect that they're interested in, like bark beetles, and then send it to them, and that helps them record where different insects can be found.
That's really awesome. And I see someone posted one that they did on SciStarter.org. Oh, Christine, that came from you. Yeah, SciStarter.org actually has a lot of really cool citizen science projects, so I highly recommend that one. VR, did you have any?
I was gonna encourage the citizen science, and our lab actually had a citizen science project studying what ants are in your backyard. So one of the projects that we did, we had people from all over the United States set out baits and collect the ants that would come to these cookie baits. And then they would send them to us, and then we would identify these ants and kind of could make a map of what ants are the most diverse in the US. And so that's just an example of a fun citizen science project. And yeah, I guess also just to add to what Rachel says, you know, creating like a diverse garden would be like a great way to encourage diversity of insects in your yard.
Yeah, that's cool. So by having lots and lots of different types of plants in your yard, you could also attract lots of different insects. Very cool. Well, we're at 10:59 now. So I'm going to ask Amy, our assistant, to go ahead and post the, there it is, the survey. And that's a reminder for all of you families at home watching to maybe fill that out together and let us know what you liked about the program or what you didn't like to help us improve. Any final words from our panelists today? Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
It was so much fun. Thank you for having me. This is the beauty of the online events, is that I get to be with you in Florida from California.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, and thank you, Rachel and VR and Madison, for leading our interview. That was so awesome to have all of you here today. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Bye.
Bye.